Hey everyone, welcome back to the Money Level Show where we think, act, and prosper. Today, we're going to be talking about oil prices. I've been doing some more homework, got a couple of articles I want to show you all, as well as some interview clips from oil geologist Art Berman. Hopefully, he will come on the channel at some point in the future as I reached out to his camp, but no promises. However, dude is just very intelligent on just the oil markets, and so like I just really trust his expertise. And so we're gonna drop the intro and then get back into this here soon. So stay tuned.
Think, act, and prosper. You are now tuned into the Money Level Show.
Alrighty. We are back. Sorry, you all. I have been a little bit silent. I've been busy, but I've still been dropping a couple of interviews here and there. I had an interview with Rick Rule drop about 10 days ago. I have another one lined up to drop soon that I did with the ROI channel, my friend Benjamin over there. And then I just dropped a interview with Alistair McLeod. So be sure to go check those out if you have not checked them out yet. Would love to have your engagement on there. So we're gonna go ahead and jump into a few things, a few articles that I've seen that I felt piqued my interest about oil. And so let's go ahead and jump over here. I mean, it's just fascinating just seeing like how all of this research and stuff is just paying off. I mean, it's paying off, and it's just a lot of confirmation. So, U.S. mega deals show fossil fuels here to stay. Saudi energy minister. So we recently had Exxon come out and buy Pioneer Energy. I think it was for 60 billion. And then we had Chevron come out and buy Hess Energy for, I think it was around 50 something billion. So when you have these big companies, big oil companies who have a lot of cash, right? I mean, these companies are just flowing with cash. I mean, they are not hurting right now. And they going out and they're buying accumulating these other companies. And they're spending billions of dollars, which shows that there is a bet that the price of oil is going to stay higher for longer, and that it's probably going to go higher. And so that is why I am invested. That is one reason why I'm invested in this commodity, because obviously we talked about the climate activists, and we talk about all that stuff, right? But just the reality is that so many things in our livelihoods run off of oil. And so we have to be paying attention to that. If you're in the video watching, drop a comment if you can. Love to see who you are, see who's watching, and engage with you all. Y'all are like family, so don't feel shy to drop a comment. So oil is here to stay as U.S. majors strike blockbuster deals, while Saudi policies are helping stabilize global crude markets, the kingdom's energy minister said at the annual investment forum. So if you don't know, I mean, we had OPEC, I think it was Russia and Saudi Arabia, start to cut a certain amount of I forgot how many million barrels per day, but they're keeping that policy until the end of the year, which is keeping a floor under the oil price as well, along with demand. Um so this, I mean, this is from the source himself. He says it's working. The kingdom has to ensure that we have a less volatile oil market that will help the global economy to grow and prosper. Crude prices rebounded to almost $100 a barrel last month, swelling profits at producers and creating a growing confidence that bolstered a flurry of huge deals in the oil patch, as we talked about Exxon and Chevron. So the prince said, I don't think Exxon would merge with Pioneer for charity purposes, or for that matter, Chevron would do that with Hess. So he's saying they are investing in these companies. They bought these companies because they're expecting to increase more production, and they're expecting to pretty much profit from this. Like this isn't, you don't just go out and just spend 60 and 50 billion dollars in the middle of a potential recession and stuff without knowing like what the future of the market looks like. And so my guy JT is on. What's up, JT? Good to see you, my brother. We got to catch up. We got to chop it up. We got to talk, man. Love to hear from you, man. I hope you're doing well, you and the family. So thank you for chiming in. But yeah, so I mean, ask yourself, would you spend 60 or 50 billion dollars for nothing? Like it's obviously they see something that many of the average people don't see, or even a lot of the politicians don't see, right? And then it says it is a testament by its own virtue that hydrocarbons are here to stay. Saudi Arabia hosts the annual F2 conference as a showcase for its efforts to develop new jobs and industries alongside technologically advanced and environmentally friendly cities that will guarantee long-term prosperity. They go on to say oil will continue to see significant demand growth as economies bounce back and as major consumers like China return to faster growth. As we know, China was they had their economy shut down the longest out of all the countries. I believe they were the longest they had to shut down, and they just reopened. And so they reopened earlier this year or something, last year or something like that. So the energy consumption is coming. More energy consumption is coming. Investment in oil is still needed to meet growing demand and avoid a jump in prices. CEO of Total Energies. So obviously, we don't have a lot of investment in oil right now. We don't have a lot of hedge funds. We don't have a lot of pension funds or just 401k funds, or these the narrative is still out there, but people are starting to wake up to reality of like, we need oil, we need natural resources. Like when you see that, obviously you still have war in Russia, Ukraine. Now you're having conflict in the Middle East, and it's going to take more weapons. It's going to take more oil to create those weapons. It's going to take more oil and energy to support those nations, right? And whether that's through military weapons or whatever it is, right? Technology and such. And so you're going to need it. You're going to need it. So I just wanted to jump to that real quick because it was a really important piece. So now we're going to go ahead and jump over to the SPR, which is the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, which was meant to be our what's going on, Brian? Good to see you, brother. Hope you're doing all right. Thank you for chiming in. What's up, JT? All right, so we're going to jump over here to the SPR, and I do want to get to a clip of an interview with Art Berman. Sometime I just comb through these hour-long interviews, y'all. So we're going to jump straight to the parts that I want to discuss with you all. But he lays it out. Let's see. This article says it's very difficult for the U.S. to reload Strategic Petroleum Reserve. And we're going to get to the history of the Strategic Petroleum Reserve because it was created for a reason, right? We're going to get to the history of that. The U.S. would probably happily reload its SPR, but it's very difficult to do so while the global oil market is running a deficit. It said in a report sent to RigZone Monday, and pretty much it's only 50% of capacity. So we've drawn down the SPR significantly to reduce the price of oil. So that is the reason why the SPR is drawn down significantly. So I'm just actually gonna find a chart for the SPR so we can look at that and see where exactly is it at. Let's see if I can find one. We'll find one soon. All right, I'll get back to the article. It said it'll have to wait to the next oil market downturn, but that also implies that the next downturn will likely be fairly short-lived and also fairly shallow, unless of course the U.S. chooses to forego the opportunity In a report, he noted that crude oil prices would probably have to rally to 150 or $200 per barrel before the U.S. would consider pushing another 100 and 200 million barrels from the SPR into the commercial market. As such, firepower of its SPR as a geopolitical oil pricing tool is now somewhat muted. So the security of supply, the U.S. has no problems with security of oil supply of crude oil. U.S. refineries have preferences for different kinds of crude slates. As a result, it still imports significant volumes of crude of different qualities. And so, but yeah, it's drawn down 50%. Now let's go ahead and jump over. We're going to jump over to this interview with Art Berman, and he breaks down the whole history of the SPR. It's pretty fascinating. So let's go ahead and jump over here and watch that. What's up, Brian? He said China hasn't sold any of the excess oil, right? I don't know. It's a good question though. But let's listen to the expert Art Berman though. Sorry.
To the first oil shock in late 1973, 1974. This is what's commonly known as the Arab oil embargo in response to the so-called Yom Kippur War. So Israel was attacked by Syria and Egypt, and the Arab countries that had become, most of them, OPEC about 10 or 12 years earlier, said, well, guys, anybody who's supporting our enemy, Israel, we're cutting you off from exports, which they did. And the U.S. was one of them. And there were, it was a horrendous psychological experience.
So he's talking and breaking down like how the history of the SPR came to fruition, how the SPR came to fruition, and there was conflict in the Middle East in which the United States supports Israel, and the other Arab nations pretty much wanted to cut everyone who supported Israel off from oil exports. And so that's how we got the oil embargo back in the 70s.
Periods, not unlike what we're talking about, Nate. I mean, life didn't end. It's just that people had to wait in line to get gasoline, horror. I mean, I don't want to do it either, but it's not like life ends when that happens. But the experience, you can imagine. I mean, this post-war ebullience that we were going through, anything is possible, American can do, etc. And suddenly we're screwed by some people that we don't even know. I mean, who are these guys? Why are they doing this to us? And so in 1975, the Congress passed a law that said, okay, we're going to do two things. We're going to create a national petroleum reserve, and we're going to pour a whole bunch of oil into mostly underground salt caverns, so that if this ever happens again, we've got a pretty good supply of our own oil that we can draw on, so that we don't get in gasoline lines and etc. like we did this time. And the other thing is, we are going to ban export of just about every kind of crude oil imaginable. Now, we didn't actually export huge amounts of crude oil back in those days, but we said, look, we just can't afford to do this. We need to keep all our oil in our country. So that was 1975. And so the Strategic Petroleum Reserve,
So if y'all didn't catch that, pretty much we started the SPR. We created the reserve so that we wouldn't have to rely on other nations to export their oil to us. And then also Congress came together to to ban oil exports from the U.S. to other nations.
Just kind of sat there, and most of it, by the way, I mean, it's all over the country, but most of it's in a couple of salt domes here in Texas and Louisiana. And I think I gave you a slide that actually shows a map of that. And so we're looking at something like 700 million barrels. So it's a fair amount of oil. There's no question about it. It's not, it's not enough. I mean, the United States uses 5 billion barrels in a year, just to give you some context. So it's a chunk, but it's not. It's a helper. Let's put it that way. It mostly sat there. And
So wow. So we use about 5 billion barrels per year, but the SPR holds about 700 million barrels. So obviously, we've had the increase in population since the 70s in the United States and such, and so now I'm sure we're using a lot more hydrocarbons as the world and has developed a whole lot since then. And so, but we're still like the SPR helps, as Art is saying, but it's only it won't get us by for a whole year if we had no oil from other nations or other sources.
And then we got to a point not very long ago, towards the end of 2021, when things started heating up with OPEC, and it looked like probably Russia was going to do something nasty, or maybe not, but in Ukraine. And we're kind of preparing for all of that. And our president, Biden, at the time said, okay, we're going to start releasing oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve so that we don't feel the pain so much. Now, just between you and me and everybody who's listening, I think that was an absolutely terrible idea. I mean, but we'd already given up on banning crude oil export in 2016. And that was an even worse idea, in my opinion. But, which is the worst of two bad ideas? I mean, if you're trying to save yourself for a rainy day, you don't do either of them, right? You can argue about, well, is this the right thing or not? But at least we're doing something. So two terrible ideas: exporting crude oil again. Now, and every
So just context, we in the 70s we banned oil exports and we started filling the SPR. In 2016, Congress took the ban off of oil exports so the United States could export energy to other nations. And then in 2021, when Biden was in office, he started selling from the SPR to reduce the price of oil.
everybody who works for an oil company say, wait a minute, that was a great idea. I mean, look at all the money we're making. Okay, yeah, it was a great idea for capitalism, a terrible idea for conserving
for
our
our
own.
future.
Yeah, for our future, exactly. So the SPR, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, got drawn down from something like 700 million barrels to where it is today, which is about 360 million. And that's 40%. That's a lot. And so, a lot of the critics and the analysts and pundits and anti-Biden kind of people say, "Oh, this is a horrible thing. I mean, look what he's done," and I just said, "Yeah, bad idea." But those are the same people that say, "Well, but it's a great idea to export crude oil." Well, you compare the two numbers, and we've drawn down, like, round numbers, 250 million barrels of Strategic Petroleum Reserve. We've exported 6.5 billion barrels of crude oil since that ban came off in 2017. And I gave you a graph showing the two. And I mean, it's like,
Wow. We only had 700 million in the SPR and we exported over a year's worth of oil um, when that ban came off. And he's talking about how that was a horrible policy because now we're in the predicament we're in. And this whole interview goes through a lot of information just in terms of like, you know, um, where they're going to find the oil in the future, like how we have to rely on less energy. And I mean, just it goes in really in depth. But I love this interview. I love hearing from Art Berman.
Like this SPR thing is insignificant. Again, we shouldn't have done either, but we did. So if you want to complain about something that's really affecting our future, stop the crude oil export, or stop complaining would probably be a better idea. Just accept that this is a done deal, or whatever you like.
Okay, so the SPR is important. It's an insurance policy. The media is blowing it out of proportion a little bit, and if they were not energy blind, they would be focusing on the reality of the United States draining America first and selling that oil to other countries is a much bigger deal than draining the SPR.
Exactly.
So here's just a naive question. Have you ever been to one of those salt caverns? Have you ever?
All right. So we had a good comment from Brian Schaefer. Nat gas exports are at all-time highs. Yeah, and the U.S. is a huge. We have a whole lot of natural gas. I mean, from what I've heard and things that I've seen, we have a whole lot of natural gas, but these resources are finite. You know what I'm saying? Like, they're not just like infinite. You know what I mean? Like, they're finite. Once you drain a lot of that, then you're going to have to figure out where you're going to get the next source from. And so now we're trying to find these usually different sources of energy. You have the rise of solar and wind and nuclear and all these different things to try to help supplement and such. But at some point further down the line, it's like, okay, if we're draining the amount of resources that we're currently, using, or even more as the world population grows, we're exporting a lot, right? At some point, people are going to have to live on less energy. I wonder how it's going to look, in 50, 100 years, if we continue to, export a lot of our natural resources, as well as how much energy we consume as well. And so very interesting. I'm going to jump to another part of the interview with Art, where he breaks down the foreign policy of oil, and he goes through goes through the history, right? And so we're going to jump over to this part of the interview. Shout out to Nate Hagans as well. You all, shout out to Nate Hagans as well for this. I'm going to go ahead and play a quick ad. You all don't go anywhere. I got to go open this door for my wife. So I'm going to play a quick ad and I'll be back. Hey everyone, sorry for the break in action, but I have to let you know that I am now an affiliate with Miles Franklin. Miles Franklin has been a bullion dealer for over 30 years, and they provide some of the highest quality service to their clients, as well as fair pricing on bullion products. So purchasing bullion through Miles Franklin not only stores wealth for yourself, but you're also supporting this channel to continue to provide free educational material for retail investors and those who may not be aware of many financial concepts that I discuss on this channel. So you can get started by sending an email to info@milesfranklin.com or calling 952-929-7006. Be sure to let them know that Daryl Thomas or the Money Level Show sent you, and I will receive credit for your service. I thank you all for considering this. Now let's get back to the interview. All right, back to the live stream. That was a false alarm. My daughter came in and she rang the doorbell. She came up to the door, rang the doorbell, but they got into the house. All right. So you kids, you got to love them. You got to love them. Right. So we're going to go ahead and play this part where where Art Berman breaks down just all of the part of, most of the history with oil production and U.S. foreign policy after World War II. I'm a history bug. I think many of you know that, but this is pretty fascinating how he just knows this stuff.
And that seems incredibly tenuous to me now. Depletion aside, just looking at geopolitics, what are your thoughts there?
Yeah, and I hate to rag on on people and things, but since you asked the question, I mean, the United States has so thoroughly bungled foreign policy uh, since, well, I'll give Clinton a break, although he kind of goes both ways, but really since the first President Bush. And so let's just step back briefly into the mists of history, and recall that President Roosevelt, on his way back to the U.S. from Yalta, made a stop on an aircraft carrier in the Suez Canal to meet with the King of Saudi Arabia to create a security agreement whereby the United States would guarantee the security of Saudi Arabia. Now, this was 1945. The state of Saudi Arabia was only 12 or 13 years old at this time. So, really tenuous kind of situation. The United States will guarantee the sovereignty of Saudi Arabia if Saudi Arabia will guarantee a future supply of oil to the United States and its allies, and therefore the New World Order, which was being written in places like Yalta by Churchill and Roosevelt and Stalin and others. And that was absolutely the centerpiece of American foreign policy from 1945 until the younger Bush decided to screw it up by invading Iraq and Afghanistan. Now, recall his father, the first Bush, did kick Saddam Hussein out of Kuwait and then stopped. And he stopped for a very good reason, and that was he wanted to honor America's principal guiding philosophy in foreign policy, which was don't screw things up in the Middle East. And by not only invading, but occupying Iraq and Afghanistan, the younger Bush thoroughly screwed things up, completely changed the balance of power, gave huge power to Iran. Saudi Arabia and Iran have hated each other, since the son-in-law of Mohammed, wasn't chosen to succeed him, and that's a whole nother thing. And then comes along Obama, who decided that we don't need Saudi Arabia because we got shale. He listened to all the wrong voices in the room, as Bush did on foreign policy. We don't really need shale, and what we need is Saudi Arabia. What we need is to get into a better relationship with Iran, which of course is Saudi Arabia's arch enemy. So immediately Saudi Arabia was completely pissed with Obama and the United States. Obama also decided, it really wasn't worth supporting Israel because what's Israel got to offer us? So, he just cut the cord on our traditional allies in the Middle East in favor of, and I'm not saying he was right or wrong. I'm just telling you, well, I did say he bungled it, but I mean, this is what happened. And so, Trump comes into office.
I'm just gonna pause it there. We're gonna continue it, but he's saying some real stuff. Like he's showing just like how foreign policy, how these politicians, especially those that we've had in the 2000s and even the late 90s, the decade of the 90s, how they just fumbled the ball on many of these things that were built upon by previous presidents. And so I mean, just thinking of this is like, okay, now, we got, Biden in office, and I mean, even looking at the debates from the Republicans, like, and it's just like, it's like a clown show to me. You know what I'm saying? Like, it's like, okay, who's taking this stuff serious? Who has, who's savvy in this? You know what I mean? And so like, it's kind of frustrating and disheartening, but you could see that, the leadership within this nation, with the deficit spending, the debts, the energy policies, the foreign policies, all these things are not benefiting us at all, right? I mean, it benefits some people, but it's really just hurting us in the long term. And so I'm gonna get off my soapbox now.
And, let's give him credit for making Saudi Arabia the first foreign stop he made as a president. But let's think about what he was doing there. What he was doing there was he wanted to woo the the crown prince, Mohammed bin Salman, who at his Vision 2030 was planning all kinds of sports events, okay, in which, now he's buying golf leagues and soccer leagues, and Trump wanted in on that game. He wanted, he's a hotel kind of guy, right? And so he was there, in my opinion, for, as usual, a lot of the wrong reasons. He didn't have any comprehension of oil particularly. And so, and so we've got this really rocky relationship. Trump is trying to do something in a weird way. Then Saudi, they get their main refinery center blown up, presumably by Yemeni rebels backed by Iran or whatever, and nobody from the State Department even calls and says, "Geez, we feel your pain, man. Just ignore it." It's like been a death in the family. So Saudi Arabia had 20 years of reasons to think, man, you guys in America, you suck. You have not been our friend. You have not had our backs. And yeah, we're glad to buy weapons from you and stuff like that, but we're kind of looking elsewhere. So that's the state of affairs, to answer your question in not a very simple or short way, but that's the simple answer as I see it.
Well, there's nothing.
All right, so now he's going to get into Biden. Biden does not get off the hook on this. All right. Biden does not get off the hook.
Nothing simple, but there's lots of things perilous about our global energy and geopolitical situation. You just described Saudi Arabia and their mistrust and fraying of relationship with the United States. I let you in on a little secret. Russia is not all that enamored of the United States at the moment.
No.
And between the two of them, it's 42% of world oil exports between those two countries.
Well, you're precisely right. Yeah.
I think and this is a huge risk that we just assume that there is a global market for things, and global cooperation and fungibility and letters of credit and overnight supply chains will always exist if there's a profit, but there's a geopolitical trust is probably depleting faster than oil is. And it's a real thing, Art.
Well, it's not only a thing, Nate, but let's think for just a moment about, I just described, to use your term, the energy blindness of 3 or 4 American presidents. And by the way, Biden is absolutely, following in Obama's flawed foreign policy footsteps. So this, my criticisms are not political at all here. We could talk about that in a different time, but I'm just talking about how 4 American presidents have completely failed to grasp the central importance of energy, not just because it's important, but as the core of American foreign policy, as it was set out by Franklin Roosevelt and fully understood by every president, even, the evil Nixon. They all got it, and then somehow we forgot it. Now, to your point though about Russia, and
yeah, man, he goes in. This dude's very knowledgeable. He goes in. What do y'all think? What do y'all think about what Art had to share? What do y'all think about what he had to share? Because I personally just feel like our leaders are fumbling the ball, making huge bloopers and mistakes. It seems like a clown show. I have no certainty. It's hard to put your future in the hands of our current leadership. You know what I mean? Like, do you all trust our current leadership with your future? We've talked about this on multiple things. Right now, we're just talking about oil. Like, we haven't even touched on, Social Security, Medicare, anything like that. We haven't even touched on that. You know what I'm saying? Like, if I, go and if I go and look up, let's go and look it up. I just got to keep showing y'all this. This is a reminder. Got to keep showing y'all this. The national debt clock. They got some type of comic here. CBDC lockout. I'll take a medium twist cone. So sorry, but we don't accept cash. Okay, fine. I'll beam it to you. I'm sorry, sir, but your purchase is coming up declined on our side. That's impossible. I've got plenty of money in my account. I'm sure, but I see a special code 186. There must be some mistake. No, sir. It means that you're not allowed to buy anything of a sustainable or satisfying nature. Shucks, I guess that means no more crypto loading or silver stacking. I don't get it. I don't know if y'all get it or not. Why did it say CBDC lockout? That's weird. And it won't even let me click off of it. I don't know what the heck going on. So, anyways, cool graphic. I don't know what they mean in particular. If y'all get it, let me know. So, I mean, obviously the U.S. national debt, I mean, we're approaching 34 trillion. Biden did come out and plead for 106 billion to send over to Ukraine and Israel. Budget deficits at 1.7 trillion. Our debt to GDP ratio is 124%. So that means how much production we have, the total amount of goods and production in the country. Our debt is 120% more than that. So if that gives you some context for that. And as you can see, we were 50% in the 60s, 34% in the 80s, 55% in the 2000s. So when you look at the 80s, I mean, we obviously had less debt even while battling inflation. That's why Lynn Alden likes to refer to this period of high debt to GDP ratio to the 40s when we were in World War II and financing a lot of war. By the way, Lynn Alden is going to be on the channel next week at the New Orleans Investment Conference. So if you got any questions, be sure to submit them my way. So obviously, and then we see, the credit card debt and such. But yeah, like it's bad, right? Social Security liability, 26 trillion, Medicare liability, 40 trillion, unfunded liabilities, almost $211 trillion. So, do you trust your future in the government's hands? Obviously with the foreign policy, I mean, a lot of us don't have a say in that, but there are ways that you can become more self-sustainable and such. And so there's a lot of things you could do, but do you trust the government with your future? So if you don't, and you need precious metals, be sure to email Miles Franklin or call the number, let them know that I sent you, the Money Level Show sent you, so that I can receive credit. You support the channel, continue to provide educational material for the people. So be sure to do that. Well, I got to get going, y'all. I think I'm going to go chill with the family, play a little bit of video games. I don't play video games often, but lately I've been just like, hey, I'm just going to play some video games, right? So that's what I'm going to do. But y'all take care. Be sure to drop a comment, share this with a friend or something. Appreciate y'all support. All right, y'all. Peace.